Sometimes it's already streaming before it says it is. Like it says preparing, and now it's setting up your meeting for YouTube Live, but it's probably already begun. It says done, redirecting to YouTube. So now sometimes it's already streaming before it says it is. Like it says preparing, silence, setting up your meeting for. All right, YouTube is silenced. Now I'm back to you guys. So we're all on YouTube. Welcome to the show. This is the Ovanova Abundant Energy Show. I'm Lester. That's John waving his hand. It's our friend Trevor with a beautiful beard, and then our friend, a genius crypto expert and just a good-hearted human being, Jon Peters, is with us tonight. But the whole idea behind this, John was over at Friendsgiving or Thanksgiving with one of our buddies, or maybe even a Christmas giving. And they just said, you guys need to create some consistent content because you're always talking about stuff that is pretty interesting, at least to some people. And so give them a way to find it, start creating more stuff. Don't just show your fundraisers online that you're doing, teaching people about clean energy, like make it more interesting. So we're like, all right, that sounds fun. So we don't know where this is going to go, but we know we're going to talk about stuff that we're interested in. Hopefully you will be too. But let me give you a concept of one problem abundant energy could solve. And then we're going to talk about crypto tonight because that's going to be really fun. But abundant energy, people always talk about we're running out of water. That might be true. There's a lot of water in the ocean. If you had a super abundant amount of energy, you could have a super abundant number of desalination plants and pumping stations and all types of infrastructure to solve that problem. So it's just one kind of bizarre out there thing. Every problem is an energy problem. And there's one area of something that we really think is pretty cool, which is cryptocurrency, blockchain stuff. It's getting a bad name right now for all the energy that it consumes. So we asked Jon Peters to get on here. It's been deep in this Bitcoin stuff for a while, deep in the crypto stuff for a while, and just kind of like educate us, talk to us about what's going on, why this is a good thing. And then we got some ideas on how it could, maybe solar might be able to help out with that. But that's a bad introduction for John. John, how would you give yourself a self-introduction if you weren't trying to be modest?
Well, Lester, you're overly polite and kind, so thank you. I'm definitely not an expert, but just have some experience in the space for the last few years. I'm a marketing consultant. I love tech, and I love the freedom and the ideology and principles behind Bitcoin. So that's what has brought me to the space. We can stay off of the government related discussions and talks because I think it's just more Bitcoin specifically and cryptos are more about self-sovereignty and just personal freedom. Yeah, how would I describe myself? Yeah, just a technologist, fortunate to be born and raised on the West Coast, and got into crypto about 5 or 6 years ago through some people that were much smarter than me. And as I think we've all learned, it's a deep rabbit hole. So I enjoy spending most parts of my day just learning and trying to educate myself because every day there's something new. The funny part, because part of this, I think, is also to have some humor with what we're doing. Today was some tweets back and forth with Senator Warren and Elon Musk. I don't know if you guys saw that, but Senator Warren, who's quite anti-crypto, called Elon a freeloader. Right? So that Twitter's going crazy at the moment with that controversy just due to the fact of all of the goodness that he has done. And being one of the wealthiest men in the world, I do believe that he's helped give back quite a bit through Tesla, SpaceX, and just donations out of his own pocket. But
he gave our country our imagination back. Like,
agreed.
Look, we can reland rockets. We can have really cool electric cars. He gave John and I wouldn't even be in solar without this stuff, his early efforts to try to solve those problems. So grateful for that.
Well, we all grew up with the Jetsons, right? So, and
it's funny you brought that up. I told somebody last night, I was like, maybe I need to start saying it like this. It's like, if you boil down a lot of the problems in our world, we believe come down to the fact that we're living in a Jetsons world technologically and a Flintstones world energy-wise, like literally dinosaur energy. When those two worlds collide, you get what's going on in our country right now. It could be one oversimplified explanation of what's going on, but there's definitely a clash there. So we do live in a Jetsons world.
Yeah, no, it's actually a really good point. The Jetsons and the Flintstones. Yeah, all in one. So
all in one.
Yeah, I'm here to help and provide any knowledge and experience that I can.
Well, the first thing I was going to ask you about, just because some people might run across this and they've never even thought about Bitcoin or blockchain or all that. So it might be remedial, but if I were a 5-year-old or maybe a 12-year-old that could understand things, how would you explain to me these principles and values of which you speak in Bitcoin, and like how does it help provide agency in those things?
I think one of the most important things that underlying every cryptocurrency is actually a blockchain. And the blockchain, in the simplest terms, is a dumb ledger. It's really kind of that simple. It's a digitized ledger. It monitors and validates transactions. It's immutable. It can't change it once the transaction is actually confirmed. So I know quite often we always just jump into, I think it's human nature, into the currency and the monetary side of things, but the underlying technology, we're moving into Web 3.0, we're moving into DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, but that cryptography and the blockchain technology underlying all the cryptos and the money is the evolution, and that's the technology. The benefit of that blockchain specific to Bitcoin is just the currency that's on top of that, the store of value of it, the ability for it to create equality around the world with people. You know, if you think about friends and or individuals that are around the world, from Australia to Africa to South America to Iceland to Europe to Russia, if each person has one Bitcoin or a fraction of that Bitcoin, they all have the same monetary value, as opposed to the Australian dollar versus the South African rand, the Kenyan shilling, to the euro, to the Russian ruble, to the Chinese yen. So I think that equality is also another benefit of the blockchain and the cryptos, Bitcoin specifically.
So when you talk about like a ledger, let me see if this would be an example of what you mean. Right now I go to the gas station and I pick up a bottle of water, and I use my credit card to pay for that water. That's a ledger too. It's just a ledger that's kept by my bank.
Correct.
Which means that I could go challenge the transaction, so it is changeable, but also it could be changed against me if I'm a merchant, or, you know, so it's not like a good or a bad thing. It's just a feature thing. Like, do you prefer things that are actually real or things that can be changed? I think all business owners would like things that are real, you know, if we're dealing with real. And it certainly would create a lot of trust if people could see, so people can see the ledger too, right? Not just the participants, but everybody can see that this transaction really took place. So I'm rambling here. What I'm trying to say is, instead of a bank verifying that there's money in my account when I swipe my credit card, what Bitcoin does is, if I make a transaction, there's a whole network of people called miners. Is that right?
Correct. Exactly. Yes.
And that's what the miners are doing, is they're just verifying transactions so that there's no bank required to do that.
Correct. Yeah. The terminology in the industry is decentralized versus centralized. If you think about Visa or MasterCard, your bank, whether it's JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, most all banks, those are all centralized entities, just as you stated. So with that, you have even PayPal and Venmo, right? Those are also entities that are effectively authorizing your transaction.
Authorized to verify.
Yeah, exactly. And they, just as it's happened to probably everybody at one point in time, whether the bank or the software or somebody at the bank pushes the wrong button, your account can be frozen. You could lose funds. You could have inadvertently have a transaction placed upon your account that you had nothing to do with. To your point about merchant charges and then merchant returns. Bitcoin specifically is decentralized, to your point. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of computers on the network. Specifically, without getting too technical, those are nodes that verify the transaction. But to your point, a miner or the machine that does the cryptography validates that transaction, confirms that transaction on the blockchain, which to your point is just a publicly accessible search engine where people can see the transaction. And then with that, the system, the decentralized system, effectively cannot be taken down unless there was like a global power outage, which won't happen. And even if it did happen, there are actually transactions that are going up to space. There's satellites up there that are backing up Bitcoin verification, but we won't go into that. But yeah, so decentralized versus centralized.
And so anything where it's more spread out is generally more stable. If you have like 1 point you're standing on versus 4 points you're standing on, dogs usually have better balance than humans do.
Correct. Yeah, the idea is primarily that well, perfect example of the network capacity over the last few months, we saw China banning for, I don't know, the nth time of, 50th or 100th time of China banning Bitcoin. But what they did, they forced a number of the miners in China to actually decommission their machines and sell those machines or just take them offline. And so we saw over the last few months a decrease of what's called hash rate, or just the computers on the network. That decreased about 1/3. And then over the last few weeks, we've seen that build back up to the consistently normal hash rate, because majority of those machines that went down in the East and China have now been brought back online up in the West. Predominantly most of those in the US in this scenario in the last few months. But it does enable, the system can go down or offline slightly, but the overall system remains up because of the decentralized machines, all the other nodes and machines that are out there validating transactions.
Yeah, there probably are a lot of banks that could lose 1/3 of their computer system and still be able to maintain integrity.
No, it would be, I think the analogy is sometimes similar to the airport systems. They all run on, I think, Sabre or that old school system. And how often in the last few years have we had a network or a technology issue, and the software goes down, and so all of a sudden all the airplanes are froze on the ground, or there's changes in congestion based upon the system going down.
That makes sense.
Would it be linear if the half the computers are out of service for some reason? Would it take twice as long to validate a transaction?
No. The short answer is no. Without getting into the technicalities, the bulk of all of the transactions are in what are called pools. There's probably 6 to 8 large pools because of where we are with the Bitcoin blockchain and the globalization of it. There are the most efficient way effectively to mine and generate the Bitcoin rewards out of the blockchain through the verification or the cryptography is connecting your miners to a pool. So you have a larger percentage and share in the greater slice of pie, if you will. So even if I think 1/3 or half of the units went offline for some reasons, the actual processing time or the transaction verification time does not decrease.
It'd still be 10 minutes, right? Isn't that ish? Like it's kind of right.
It seems to be anywhere from about 5 to 15 minutes. I recall in 2017 very specifically that we didn't have the hash rate, i.e. the amount of machines that were online was substantially lower. So sometimes we had to wait for hours, and even in some instances 24 or 36 hours, a day and a half, to get a transaction to get fully confirmed.
Wow.
So we've seen obviously an increased hash rate and a lot more efficiency, getting down, Lester, to your point, about 10 minutes. But just 3-4 years ago, things were substantially longer. I remember doing a few peer-to-peer transactions with people either buying or selling Bitcoin, and we would try to do the entire transaction at Starbucks or someplace. But what we ended up doing, what I felt comfortable, as long as we had one confirmation, meaning that one miner, one node validated it, and typically you want a minimum of 6 for the entire transaction to be secure. But usually if we saw one confirmed miner with the transaction, then the buyer or seller would be comfortable to release the funds and to move forward. But yeah, there are some situations where a peer-to-peer transaction turned into a 4 to 5 hour lunch or meeting with somebody, because as the seller, you have to wait for the transaction. You can send it, but you have to wait for that transaction to get received on the recipient side. And then the receiver, the buyer, definitely wants to make sure that he sees the tokens in his wallet before he releases the funds to you. So yeah, we've moved into a much more efficient world.
And so is it possible that if everyone, let's say everybody tomorrow just adopted some Bitcoin, like all of it, we put every dollar and every Deutschmark and every yuan in the world tomorrow said, all right, we're going to Bitcoin, and we're going to assume that Bitcoin or Ethereum or some blockchain technology has solved the transactions per second problem. So it doesn't take 4 minutes or 4 hours. Where you can do tens of thousands in a second. I know there's different protocols being worked on for that. Then what would happen? All the money is now in a blockchain. How does that world even function, and what are the benefits of living in it? We don't have dollars anymore. We're trading Bitcoin and other things.
Well, so there's a fixed amount of Bitcoin, right? 21 million. But in reality, due to lost private keys, broken, damaged computers, numerous reasons, we believe there's approximately 1 to 2 million Bitcoins lost, if you will. And
did you call that a gift? Like, he foresaw that, right? He called it like a gift to everybody because he knew that sometimes they'd be lost, and that was just part of it.
Yeah, it's frustrating and horrible for those people that lost it. But yeah, to your point, I think it's just part of the mechanism that's built into the greater scheme of things. Again, almost no different than a bank account being frozen and or your wallet being lost. Hate to say even stolen, because we've had plenty of rug pulls and scams too, Mt. Gox and others. Yeah, so if they took all the fiat money that's in the world and put it towards Bitcoin, they could only procure the available supply of Bitcoin, which we have seen historically causes the price to increase, right? It's very simple Econ 101, demand and supply. So the supply goes away based upon this thesis or theory, then the price would exponentially
increase. Yeah.
Yep.
At orders of magnitude exponents.
Correct.
And so that you're looking at, it would be like a Bitcoin could be several quadrillion dollars if we're talking about the world economy, or even bigger.
Yep. And I think we just hit a threshold of in the last 48 hours or so of 19 million with an M tokens, Bitcoin tokens being created and generated. So that's in the circulating supply. And the way the algorithm's written, and don't mark these words directly, I would prefer to look back at notes, but there's a difficulty rate, a hash rate, a few other variables within the algorithm. And the best of memory, in the next 4 years, there will be X amount of Bitcoins created. But then the remainder to get to that 21 million will take the next 100 years. Wow. So there's what's called difficulty scales or difficulty bombs in each block. Going back to that ledger, the blockchain is just a set of blocks. You can use an analogy of Legos and how you stack them together. And for every block that's created, you get a reward. And that's actually where the Bitcoin comes from. When the cryptography happens, the verification of the computation and the verification happens. Once that block is finalized, whichever miners and or contributors to put hashing power and computer energy towards those computations, the reward for each block is then divvied into that pool or those individuals that contributed the processing power.
So you have a miner which is authorized to verify, and it joins a big team. And if your team wins, you get paid based on whatever percentage of effort you gave to that team.
You got it. Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
And so it pulls the team, and then the verifications, you don't have to like sit over it and do calculus problems. It just does it on its own, like a toaster.
Yeah, exactly. It's plug and play. And as long as it's up and running, you will. Oh, we got a visitor.
Yeah.
The kitty cat came.
Hymns.
Nice. Yeah, so whoever's connected to that pool, either individually or collectively, that's where those rewards are then distributed to.
So most people believe their money is real anyway, right? Like they think that there's a limited amount, and this percentage that I like this $100 bill actually means something other than some type of societal agreement. So getting back, because I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about this. All right, so first of all, the value of Bitcoin goes to forever, but then it's over, and now we're using this and we can transact with it. How do you feel that if it were a fully adopted, and that was how everybody in the world chose to agree to conduct transactions, what would be the benefits to humanity for choosing not just sound money? We don't need to get into economic theory, but like an electronic form of perfect public ledger. What would be the upside to that? What would go away?
Yeah, good question. Well, Bitcoin, to your point earlier, the transactions are verifiable, meaning, and we use a term of pseudo-anonymity, meaning that your wallet address is alphanumeric characters of X length, and depending on who you share your wallet address with will increase or decrease the awareness and the visibility to your wallet address. So the pseudo-anonymity, in the sense that anybody can go look up these addresses, because again, they're on an Explorer, effectively like a blockchain-based search engine. There are numerous of them. So the anonymity, pseudo-anonymity, is one aspect of it, that people could make assumptions, or it could give them an opportunity to not hide their wealth, but not disclose their wealth, right? Because if a random individual has, perhaps they were acquiring Bitcoin, 8-10 years ago, they could have been mining it from their own computer and saved a fair amount of them over the years. And as difficulty increased, they could have changed their mind, but they could be sitting on literally 1, 3, 5, 7, 10,000 Bitcoins. And the blockchain, the Explorer function, the search function, would show the holdings, but it would not show the true ownership. So that could be an individual, it could be an entity, it could be a sovereign fund, it could be a country. As the technology grows and more visibility to the blockchain grows, more users adopt, more and more tools and people are starting to keep track of ownership, specifically and mainly around exchanges. So we have a lot of clarity to which wallets hold Bitcoin for which exchanges. And so you can see, as an example, that Huboy is an example, that they might be sitting on 250,000 Bitcoins, and Binance might be sitting on 300,000. Kraken might be sitting on 50,000 or 5,000. And that goes back to your earlier question just about the supply. So as that supply dwindles, it triggers price increases and decreases. Primarily, I personally don't see Bitcoin can be used as a peer-to-peer currency, but I don't think it's the best crypto or the best token out there to be facilitating person-to-person or peer-to-peer transactions due to, as we were just previously discussing, network speeds, cost, things of this nature. There are other tokens out there that have the same transparency, the same capabilities, but they're just more efficient. And some of them act as a better currency mechanism versus we're seeing Bitcoin being used in the terms of like a digital gold as a store of value. So as you were stating, the fiat money, we all agree that a dollar is a dollar, $5 is $5, 50 is a 50, and 100 is 100, based upon the user's kind of agreement with that, even though with inflation rates and other aspects of the US currency, that dollar actually has a much lower functioning cost, but on its face value, it's still seen to be a dollar. Whereas Bitcoin will retain its true value. It has a natural inflation. I think it's currently about 1.89, 1.9% versus I think some of the most recent inflation numbers are closer to 6 to 6.5% with the US market. So I think it has a lot of different advantages. Personally, again, I just see it to be more of a store of value, like holding onto real estate or gold, digital gold in this case, or even fine art that you anticipate will appreciate over time.
All right. So let's say we all put all of our money into Bitcoin and now it's fundamentally sound money. It's the backbone that runs everything else. And then we use this money to invest in platforms that can do everything that Web 3.0 promises to be able to do. What does that world look like? How does if the very best things come out of what you believe from being in this world and what you spend all day learning about with these blockchains, how could that change my experience of the world, your experience of the world? What type of organizations that none of us really like go away? Which ones have to reform? Like, what would be the upside of running the world on this technology as opposed to centralized hubs of information verification?
Well, personally, one of the concepts behind crypto as a whole, blockchain, DAOs, just referring to Bitcoin in this case, is simply the ability to bank the unbanked. If you think of it from this perspective, if people don't have enough money or if they just have fear of banks, what comes to mind for me often is Africa and the millions of people there that have the requirement for currency, a type of currency to buy and sell food and life necessities, goats, chickens, things of this nature, apples, mangoes, coconuts. But they don't have a currency that's stable, a fiat currency. Zimbabwe instantly comes to mind about the hyperinflation that happens there. But one of the biggest things and what really has me clued into the Bitcoin space is the ability for other countries, I hate to use the term third world countries, but other countries and those that are unbanked, it gives them the ability, if they have mobile device, they can connect to the network and effectively have and use a currency without going to a bank, without going to an ATM, without having a debit card, without using, depending on what country they're in, those centralized resources. So now that we're in an age of technology that simply we can do almost everything through our phone, and those even later generation iPhones and Androids are finally getting to Africa and South America and other countries, India and such. It gives us the ability for those people, again, that were traditionally unbanked to have a means to connect to the rest of the world, local benefit as well as kind of global benefit and interaction. That's only one focus area, but it's something that's important to me. It's just the ability to see more equality throughout the world.
why is that something that speaks to you?
Personally, it just comes from a lot of travels, and being born and raised in the West Coast in California, and then traveling and seeing a lot of hardship, both in this state and country, but also more so in other parts of the world. It's just goes back to the end of the day, we're all humans, we're all bleed the same color. So if we have global prosperity, I think that benefits everybody. That's the kind of the connection for me. It's just the ability to help other people help themselves. So if we can educate people about crypto, blockchain, again, referencing Bitcoin in this case, if we can help educate other people in other parts of the world that are at some form of a disadvantage, it will empower them to help themselves. Kind of the motto of teaching somebody how to fish as opposed to just giving them the fish.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. My friend Wilson said this thing once about the first part you've always heard, like give a man a fish, feed him for a day, or give a person a fish, feed the person for a day, teach the person to fish, feed it for a lifetime, and call them people it's. And then what Wilson said was teach a person to fish and feed the whole world forever. And so I thought it was pretty cool, and somebody like my dad, I was trying to explain Bitcoin to him. He goes, well, I remember in 1981, the bank didn't give me credit for $1,600 that I know that I put in because I gave him 2 checks that week or 2 deposits of the same amount. They only gave me credit for 1. So he's like, I love this idea that they can't change transactions. Like most people, I've never had a problem like that with their bank, but that's just my dad. He remembers everything like that in his life. But my mom's like, don't be messing with that Bitcoin. It's not real money, but I have very rural Southern parents. But, if it's for everybody and to alleviate poverty, it's for those guys too. So what would you say to somebody like my mom that's like, Bitcoin's not real money, if she had time to listen and the intellectual capacity to understand what you were saying?
It's probably the same thing that I explained to my mom and dad.
What'd you tell them?
Which simply that although I'm very paper money oriented, they function very heavily with a debit card, whether it's gas station, the grocery store. They use technology or a debit card to make transfers. Just recently, they had to pay a friend for a shared lunch, so they used PayPal. So effectively, all that's happening is ones and zeros are being moved back and forth. So that money is digitized already. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, that although Bitcoin might be new, or the concept might be new to that generation, for the last decade, if not the last 20 years, your parents, my parents, John's parents, they've all been using ones and zeros, digitized money, to purchase, buy, and sell goods and services. So it's not as far off. It's not really the Jetsons or the Flintstones, because we've already been there for a while.
Yeah.
But I think it's also just conditioning and generational components too. My mom still writes checks for things, and I've never personally had a checkbook in my life. So
yeah. So it's just a technological curve, and some people will get it, some people won't, and it'll be okay.
Just an adoption thing.
Yeah.
John, are your parents checkbooks? Are they digitized into crypto? Do you have them operating on a wallet? What's going on with your elders?
My mom's down to get into crypto. I think how she would use it is how you describe, just something to have and to hold.
Yeah.
As opposed to something to use as a utility or to pay for yoga classes, which there's one of my favorite yoga studios in LA. You can pay with Bitcoin.
Awesome. Yep. Awesome.
It's awesome. But yeah, I mean, why in the world wouldn't somebody want an immutable, decentralized, it's just all of the things that my sister's in Kenya. She just had a child a couple of days ago. I spoke with her the first time today, and we talked about cryptocurrency, and she just hadn't really thought about it. the way that you described it today.
Hmm.
You know, that is, if somebody has a phone, they have the ability to use currency. And that's a big factor in a lot of developing countries. And there's just, I wonder if there's a list of things. I'm sure that you have it off the top of your head, but you know, with regardless of what it is, solar energy, cryptocurrency, electric vehicles, there's always like a couple things that connect with people that get them curious enough to continue to want to learn. You know, kind of like if your car ran out of gas, not everybody has a 5-gallon gas can at their house, but everybody has an outlet you can plug into.
Agreed.
Like an electric vehicle that kind of opens people up and like, oh yeah, I guess I'm like never out of energy because I could just be at a house, anywhere. Electricity is everywhere. Gas stations aren't. Or just never needing to stop at a gas station ever again because your gas station is now your home. If you have solar, it's the roof of your house, even cooler. So, but yeah, there's just concepts like that in the solar industry and electric vehicles and lots of adopt technologies. And for cryptocurrency, I don't see, I mean, I see them. I just don't know if I've been able to connect with people, and maybe you have some things that are just super clear when people hear them. They're like, oh, but the biggest one for me is just being able to have access to currency. If you have something that can connect to a network. And then again, the energy consumption thing, I've only seen a small amount of information about how much electricity mining Bitcoin uses.
Mm-hmm.
But in relation to like the banking system, I think the one article I read just recently, the banking system used more electricity with just the ATMs, branch locations, and data servers. So not counting not counting me having to drive to the bank to send a wire because it's too large to do online, or all the times, you know, all the wild things that happen because of centralized banking systems. So I'm curious, is there like a short list of stuff if you were trying to open somebody's mind, the things that you would bring up if I'm talking to my mom or my uncle?
Well, yeah, like for example, your sister most likely, and I know Kenya and that monetary quite intimately because of travels over there, but your sister most likely is on Safaricom or one of the other telco providers for her phone. Equitel and Safaricom are the two largest. So Safaricom specifically has a money processing, a money payment system called M-Pesa. Pesa in Swahili means money, and M for mobile. So your sister most likely is already using digital currency in some capacity, not specifically Bitcoin, but M-Pesa is very, very ubiquitous in Kenya and Tanzania, and I think 8 or 9 other countries over in Eastern Africa. So she's already using it. It's somewhat similar to when you go to the internet and you log into your website at your bank, right? The numbers that you see there, somebody in the back end isn't running to a vault and looking up your account, figuring, okay, you have $72,000 in there in the back, and then that's the number they put in the screen, right? It's already digitized information and data. So I don't have, or I'll rephrase, one of the biggest gaps I have is around the electricity usage component of Bitcoin. And truthfully, it's a rabbit hole I don't go down because I personally believe a lot of it's FUD, a lot of misinformation out there. Energy absolutely is used with the computer that we're on and the Bitcoin miners that you just showed us. The GPUs, if you're on an Ethereum based or any digital transaction, again, on the computer or in the cloud, it's going to take some form of energy. So do we need to be mindful and cognizant of utilizing different types of energy to find the most efficient and the best use of energy, depending on what we're trying to create or build? Yes, it's just being mindful, I think, of the population and the globe. But yeah, one area that I can't speak to is just about the comparison. I've heard everything from one washing machine or dryer in a house uses the same amount as a Bitcoin miner for one day. to all kinds of other examples about the usage. I think it's just all blown out of proportion depending on who's talking about the topic. To your mom and to your sister, I think it's just easing them in, and we're slowly getting the applications and the wallets to a more user-friendly place. Again, no different than the internet's 20 years ago, right? We were on 14.4, 28.8 modems, and the primary use of the internet was for email, and that was very rude and elementary. But now we're on a live stream, so we have live video with people all around the US interacting thanks to the internet. So we've evolved over time. And I think the big thing that's often forgotten is Bitcoin's only 10 to 11 years old, right? Halloween of 2009. So we're only a decade into it. And the growth and adoption that we've seen, especially in the last 3 to 5 years, is huge. So I think it's just a matter of time, not forcing it on them, but just finding an area that might interest them and then giving them the tools to help them educate themselves. And with that being said too, maybe they don't have a need for it. Maybe they don't have an interest in it, and that's perfectly okay too. But I think globally, we're still at less than 3% adoption. So that just tells you how much room and how much space we have to grow.
They were going to come around. So I think if we backed up further, so to your humanitarian side and loving to support people, give to people, that's been my experience of you, Jon. You have a wonderful soul. I think that's where this mission, I think that's where our whole things kind of connect, because when you're talking about a phone, the first thing that can trade, and we can bring the unbanked into society so they can be rewarded for whatever contributions that they can create and share with the world, because they can connect with us now. The first thing I think about before a phone is that last time I checked, there were 1.1 billion people in the world who still don't even have electricity. And I haven't seen a phone that would work without that yet. And even if Bitcoin mining took very little energy, it's still some energy. Yep. And so, but it seems like if someone did have a solar array which could produce electricity and charge a cell phone, and they had a Starlink satellite that could provide internet, then they would just be a Bitcoin wallet away from being able to engage in the world's economy.
Agreed. Yeah, a little education. Yeah, a little education for safety and security, and then absolutely getting them set up with a wallet so they understood and they're on their way.
I think you're on the right side of history, because one of the things that we've noticed as we've been talking to people about solar is that we bring up Bitcoin mining, they get really excited. We've had 2 or 3 different people now, Jon, that you tell, how's that going? Like, what's been your experience? And then Jon's got this idea that he came up with, or I'm sure he didn't come up with it, but there hasn't been a lot in it. He's gone to the parts of the internet where he had to make stuff up about heating houses and stuff with Bitcoin. But tell them what's going on at the Regen Center, Jon, and all that stuff.
Yeah, we're having a ton of fun with it. So, I mean, I was born in upstate New York, and we cut a lot of wood and split a lot of wood and load a wood stove and stack a lot of wood. And, it's just a thing. It's just a way of life. Staying warm is always been, just from my perspective, something to like a part of life. And if people heat with electricity, they know. And if they don't heat with electricity, then they pay a lot of gas bills, right? And these are pain points for people: their propane bill or their electricity bill in the wintertime, or they heat with wood, which is a lot of work. And so when I first became just introduced to the amount of heat that a mining rig puts off, it was kind of I mean, how many years, Lester, have we been talking about? So at this Regen Center we're building, we're going to have a couple 100-foot long greenhouses, and we've been talking about heating with cryptocurrency since before we even bought the property. It's like, how do you keep these greenhouses warm without spending a ton of money and just wasting electricity and polluting and all the things? It just, we wanted to figure it out. We're like, oh, we'll just use the sunshine to mine crypto and heat the building. So just recently was our first experience of this, and we have a 30 by 80 foot steel building that
2 stories.
Yeah, 2 stories that is hot. Trevor slept there last night, and he has helped us put up some drywall recently, and he's it
gets warm in there
in December in shorts and a t-shirt, sweating. True story.
Really, just shorts.
Yeah, just
sweating.
So it is a lot of heat, so much heat, and so there's that that you can produce a lot of heat, hands down, no problem, all day.
And that's with what, 4 miners that are vented directly into the building?
Yeah, I'm in a geodesic dome right now. This will probably be maybe 2,700 square feet. It's got a basement. That rectangle, that square right there is plexiglass. You can remove it and climb that rope from the basement to the loft. So it's good airflow, a lot of airspace, and I'm only going to have 1 miner in here. That's what that setup is on the front porch I showed you before we started this, John, and happy to go back over to it.
Yeah, show it to us again once you get there. Once it's time for the show.
Okay, yeah, I'll show. But anyway, so I'm just excited about it. So either way, so we have this cool amount of heat, right? Heat's pretty easy because you can just pipe it into the house. You can put it into the standard HVAC system, an air handler that blows air throughout your ducting in your house, and just add to the current heat that your house is already producing. And then whenever gets to a certain temperature, obviously you don't need to keep producing. Or you can just use your house's fan and not your house's heater. Fans hardly use any electricity. It's the heater that uses a ton. So we've developed 3 different, just simple turnkey. If you have a standard HVAC system, this is how we'll do it, with valves to send the hot air outside in the summer, and all of that. And it creates a couple problems for people who don't necessarily have a good understanding of thermodynamics, airflow, negative and positive pressure systems in houses. And I just recently learned this, not connected to crypto at all. Luckily, we have a neighbor out by the Regen Center who works in house, all things house efficiency related, right? And he saw some of the work we were doing on this cabin we built, and he was like, "That's not going to fly." And this was months ago. So we had to rip up the floor twice to do what he suggested to properly seal this home so the moisture wouldn't be an issue. And I learned a lot about negative and positive pressure. So I just luckily got to apply this to crypto and adding these systems into households. So I'll just explain one simple problem, and then if you want to dive deeper into it, cool. If not, I'll just show you the rig we've got going, and we can move on. But so let's just say that wintertime, no problem. In the winter, you can either pull the air from your house through the mining rigs and put it out and put it into the house, or you can pull air from outside that's cold and run it through your rigs. And from our experience, if we're taking like 40-degree outside air, pulling it through the rigs, and the air that comes out the other side is still hot enough to heat a building easily, right? And they love being cool. So these are good things. But in the summertime, you don't really want to be pulling like 90 or 100-degree humid air. And we've got customers mining in Texas, mining in Florida. These are places where you can't just pull that air through the miner and expect it to do well, right? So we're going to pull it from in our air-conditioned house. Okay, well, let's pull our air-conditioned air through our miners and then take that heated air and push it out of the house. Okay, well, that's going to create a negative pressure system, just like your bathroom vent fan, your kitchen vent fan over your stove. Those are things that suck air out of the house, and it has to be replaced from somewhere. So, John, like the fans move a lot of air, right? And if you have multiple units, we're moving a lot of air. And so typical households, you turn on your bathroom vent fan, your kitchen vent fan, that's not a lot of air. It is air. It does create issues for some homeowners, especially in tight houses that don't have a lot of leaks like the older ones. So we're making really tight houses nowadays. So we're not controlling where that air from the outside is coming into the house. It's coming in through leaks and cracks. It's moist. It condenses. It causes all sorts of issues. This is very well known about new houses. It's being mitigated in many ways, one of which is a ventilating dehumidifier. We control the new air coming into the house, and we dehumidify it, remove the moisture. It takes the load off the air conditioner, the extra load that it's experiencing, and it's really healthy and exciting for the miners. So it's just a safe, intelligent way to not only incorporate mining into the average household. What would it be like for every house in America to have a miner? For nobody to ever spend any money on heating. And I mean, in the wintertime, one of the most exciting things for me right now is doors and windows open in the winter, tons of airflow and still warm, like still to the point where like I'm taking clothes off when I go inside, so that's exciting. But also being able to solve some indoor air quality issues for people at the same time is also big for me. I've always been a nerd about indoor air quality. I don't know how I didn't come to this earlier, but it's nice. Get to move some air, get to dehumidify some air, get to filter some air.
You get paid to heat your house as long as you can have enough electricity to do it. Like imagine getting paid to heat your house.
It's exactly how it works. So this is just a little system here for someone who does not have a standard HVAC system. So I don't have ducting in my house, and you'll find that to be an intermittent but semi-common thing. So we have these things called mini splits. That thing up on the wall right there, right past the aerial yoga hammock, that thing right there. Those things just take the air from in this room, condition it, and move it through. So in order to connect to a house like this, we've got these, we've got a 400 CFM 6-inch inline fan. It's going to pull and push air. And so that's a filter back there on the top, because you can't see my cursor. Those are iris dampeners. So these things right here, you can actually open and close them. I don't think I have a semi-closed one right now, but either way, they close like an iris. That way you can open and close a valve. So you can either suck your air from the inside the house or outside the house, and you can either blow your air inside the house or outside the house, because in the summertime I just don't want to be blowing that superheated air back into my house. I just want to eject it out. So either way, and we've got multiple versions of that, so we can find some folks, and we've already found quite a few people who want to get paid to heat their home. And so the fine tuning is just how warm do you want it.
And John, does that do those ducts help muffle some of the noise that's generated too? I don't want to sidetrack because the noise is a different topic on itself, but just curious if those ducts also help with some muffling of the mining noise.
Yeah, we had some, so we were worried about this, right? Especially using metal ducting and sending those noises down a metal duct. So there's different combinations, and you can have your miners in or outside of the house depending on security and all sorts of fun things, right? But the noise was something we were very concerned with. The model we've had working for almost a month now, we use insulated ducting with like fluffy insulation. It's not a rigid steel ducting, and there's no noise at all in the building. So we're not sending sound waves down the ducting and into the space, even a little bit, which was very exciting. I don't know if that would be the case if we used metal ducting. In this case, and what we've coined them as heat noise boxes. We like it. Every time we say it, it makes heat and it makes noise, and we put them in a box, and so.
That's what a crypto miner is called in our parlance, a heat noise box.
Yeah,
Thanks Chris Snodgrass for that. Yeah.
The HNB.
HMB.
That's how they're labeled in our miner pool too. HMB1, HMB2.
Yeah.
So they're heat noise boxes, and yes, they do make heat. Yes, they do make noise. We are using 3-inch foam board, and then you can use the acoustic foam that people use in music studios and stuff like that. And we have to get relatively close to even hear them. And
Good. So it's significant.
But you don't want them in your living room. And there's definitely some strategy associated with adding a miner to your house and doing it in a way where you could do it long term. I would prefer, if somebody is going to get into mining, just knowing about it. I think that they should set themselves up to be able to mine year round in a way that's not going to make it so they have to go outside to talk on the phone or not going to have excessive heat, and they can have comfortable climate as well. So those are all things that we're committed to working with people and finding solutions to. And it's just really exciting so far anyway.
And we know, and as far as like one miner per year uses about 28,000 kilowatts, S19 at Miner Pro. And that's more than most homes use for the year if it's like a small home. Or
we
like
use 18K here.
use
18,000.
18,000 in a dome. It's well constructed, energy efficient.
And that's on average about $200 a month.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering about what 18,000 kilowatt hours with Duke Energy in North Carolina, it's about $200 a month. We don't pay for that because we have solar, but that's what it would be.
Yeah, so let's talk about that real quick, John. Could you help somebody understand, like, if the marginal cost of each additional unit of energy were approaching zero, which is what happens after your solar's paid off? Like if you had equipment that was sitting there that you could just claim it would cost you nothing to produce the next unit of energy, how would having the very low cost energy be useful for making the Bitcoin network stronger? What have you seen in terms of how energy prices lead to more mining activities? I think you're muted, Mr. Peters.
Sorry, I didn't know if that was a John with an H or John no H question.
No, it's John doesn't know anything about Bitcoin. He just is plugging in noise boxes and figuring out how to use his construction background to get hot air in there. He doesn't want to chop. He doesn't want kids chopping trees anymore.
Don't let him fool you. He's already talking about mining pools and hash rates. So. Yeah, that's one of the biggest considerations, is if you don't have an alternative electricity source, because I think that's the big differentiator. It's the path forward that your organization's going with is utilizing natural energy, i.e. the sun and solar. But if that isn't used, or wind or thermal or volcano in El Salvador and such, if you're just using the house outlets, obviously your break-even cost is going to be much higher depending on where you are in the world, in the country, and in the state as to what rate you have to pay. A very somewhat dated example, but a very easy example is I have a friend in Northern California that was paying somewhere close to, we'll say, 20 to 22 cents a kilowatt for just, that was the rate for the company that was producing and creating the energy for him, for his house and for his Bitcoin miners. And when I was in Southeast Asia a couple of years ago, mining wasn't specifically Bitcoin, but it was still mining. My equivalent rate was closer to 2 cents in Thailand specifically. So if it takes X amount of kilowatts, X amount of hours to, again, in a simple analogy, to reach 1 Bitcoin, it's going to cost my friend in Northern California effectively 20 or 22x of my cost. So the timing might be the same to get from 0 to 1 full Bitcoin through using the same pool and the same machines and such, but just the simple energy efficiency, or a wrong word, the simple aspect of my energy costs being lower versus my friends in Northern California. I think that's the biggest difference. Now we are into a environment and technology adoption where we're finding we can use solar energy, right? And I think that's the beauty of the program that you guys are putting together is the user, it doesn't matter if they're in North Carolina, upstate New York, Texas, Florida, or California, the cost for energy, if they have solar through your organization or solar in general, it's effectively net neutral, meaning that wherever you are in the country, in this model, you're not concerned about your local energy cost because you're effectively getting your energy for free through the sun and through solar.
You're muted, Lester.
So that's exactly right. I'm glad you can see that. And that's what we're going for. You know, I just did like a little rule of thumb, like a quick calculation before I got on tonight with you guys. And this has a million different variables. So don't stick me to this number. But if you are a Bitcoin miner, you had one S19 miner Pro, you need about 65 solar panels to make the amount of energy that you need to make for the year. And you probably want to go ahead and get 72 for reasons we teach you about whenever we get on the call. But that's about the amount of solar it takes. And another calculation I did that I thought was funny, because I just get sick of people talking about Bitcoin takes so much energy without thinking about all the things like John was talking about, like the driving trip to the bank, just because of some stupid rule they have about what you can do with your money, not to mention all the other things it takes to keep it in place. Like, won't even get into it tonight. But the is that there's a county in Nebraska called Scottsbluff County, Nebraska. You've probably never heard of it, like most people. And I'm sure there are great beet farmers there. I read that's what they do, and they have cornfields. And it used to be an important part on the Oregon Trail, you know, to have a view of where you were. But for all intents and purposes, it's been since 1800 since this was a significant location, other than the fact that it's still, you know, can hold life. And there are more square miles in that county than would be necessary if you filled it up with solar panels to power the entire Bitcoin network worldwide. And so imagine one portion of one small county in Western Nebraska has enough space. So I think what a lot of people don't really realize is that when they're talking about there's not enough energy, Bitcoin eats so much energy, it reminds me of being a poor kid, not having enough to eat, although we never didn't have enough to eat, but I know that people have been through that. But we definitely didn't have enough to eat everything that we wanted to eat all the time. And so it's like, who's going to get to eat that chicken leg? You know, it's like, why don't we just put some more chicken on the table? Or if you're a vegan, why don't we not have any chicken and just have a lot of veggies on the table? Or, you know, that would be really efficient. Let's just make some more, you know, and if we can have the entire Bitcoin network powered by one small county in Nebraska, and maybe in 100 years, it's 6 small counties in Nebraska, but isn't that better than a banking system? You know, and like, that's not that much. We have space. And when you keep in mind that we're talking about the entire Bitcoin network and that each miner is essentially one house, you start to see that it wouldn't take one house's worth of electricity. You can see that we can definitely solve this problem in America really fast and have so much energy that we're wondering, why in the world would we ever not do it this way? Like, why? It's, oh, because we didn't have the technology to do it better at the time. But being able to do it where we're just printing money with sunlight sounds like an imaginary world, but if you're using solar to run a crypto miner, that's what you're doing. You're printing money with sunlight. And it's a great world that humans are creating for ourselves if we can handle this technology without bringing our Flintstones habits back to us and destroying everything in the process. But we could talk for hours more. John, what do you, Big John with an H, my partner? What do you want? What would you like? What do you wish somebody would ask John if you were watching this and it wasn't it's worth the two of us doing it?
I mean, you just said it. Like, why in the world wouldn't you want to do that? You know, it's like it seems so clear, and there's so many good reasons to adopt cryptocurrency, adopt solar, adopt electric vehicles, and I'd like next week if we can, you know, maybe we invite some real people that are not scared to give feedback and do our do a clean energy event for them and see, hey, if you were us and you're looking to catalyze a transition from a world that's fueled by fire to a society connected by light, how would you, is this spot on? How would you design this differently? Because to us, this all just makes sense. You know, John, I think you're on the same team with us from our previous conversations is, yeah, it makes sense, right? But I think if anything, I'm not patient. I have a sense of urgency. I'd like to live in a world that makes sense as soon as possible. Paying money to heat my house when I can get paid to heat it, that doesn't make sense, right? When I can strengthen and support a network that I intend on being a part of for the rest of my life, the Bitcoin network, then no. So these are, I'm curious if, how you would suggest, for us using this platform of maybe a weekly conversation to move this forward, to speed this up, to, be in line with our mission to add as much value as possible to as many lives as possible. And we just have a sense of urgency that in some cases like can be inhibitive, it can slow us down. Right. So I guess if all that rant right there was put into a question is we need help. We need to reach people. We want this to the amount of logic associated with everything we've discussed tonight to hit people in a way that they keep looking into it, they keep researching, they come back, they pay attention next week, that type of thing. So from all that you've heard about Ovanova and about what we're up to, I mean, do you have any advice for us as how we can get this thing moving?
I think that to your point about the sense of urgency, I think we're there. We're moving into this. We have moved into a digital evolution, right? Digital revolution beyond from industrial. We're now 10, maybe 20 years into a digital revolution. So it is getting the word out. Lester, your friend that mentioned, just continually creating more content and publicizing that content across social is one of the best ways to get the word out. It's the network effect, meaning it's just sharing the message with everybody we know, and sooner or later it's going to reach its tipping point and it's going to explode. Yeah, a lot of it's just education. Both of you have shared in the past some of the, I don't want to say stigmatisms around solar, but the lack of knowledge and information around solar. So I just think it's a big educational process. The approach that your organization's doing, that you can speak much better to than I, but about the donations and supporting local communities and schools. I think that approach opens up the eyes to a lot of individuals, as opposed to picking, whether it's a small town in Nebraska, North Carolina, or Texas, and knocking on doors to sell solar. I know that's not your model because I think that's an old school model. It has a benefit of creating awareness, but to gain awareness to the masses, it's a matter of connecting with some influencers, some people with extended reach. Some of the people that I've started to introduce you to both sides of the coast that just have connections, both monetarily and in what we'll call a network effect, that are in alignment with your same company missions and values, and those values of both of you and your entire team of just wanting to share the word, ensure that people are educated and understand the benefit and value of solar. And then when you add this additional benefit of a sunlight money-making, digital gold, Bitcoin making opportunity, heater and the heat factor too. It's kind of a perfect trifecta. It's just a matter of continually getting the word out. So that's, I think part of our exercise perhaps the next couple of weeks is going through and identifying guests that you can have on a live stream like this, some more interviews, some more podcasts, and just reaching a few people that have a larger reach, if you will, than we do, just to keep spreading the message. But definitely from everything I've seen, you guys are on the right track with all the activities, the knowledge sharing, the trial and error. Yeah, I'm super curious, Jon, about like I see this octagon in the back, and I'm really intrigued though just about the property that you've created for yourself and how you're utilizing everything we're talking about to benefit yourself environmentally as well as financially, right? If you can get to a point, or if you're at a point that you're being paid to heat your property and where your living space, that's awesome. So you're doing yourself a benefit, you're doing the environment a benefit, and then you're also educating the likes of myself, Lester, and those that are around you as to what's really possible. So I think, yeah, just sharing that alone is huge. I think it's incredible.
We come visit anytime, Jon.
Yeah, no, sooner than you know.
East Coast trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be really fun. I bet you know some folks. It'd be fun to brainstorm a list of people. And for the 3 people who will see this one, if there's anybody you'd like for us to have on, like, feel free to leave a comment. And Jon,
Low views.
Yeah. So Jon, thanks for being our first guest on the Open Abundant Energy Hour, or whatever this becomes called eventually.
Yeah, well, I did something that we'll have to plan and in advance next time is to, once we get the live stream link up and running, I tweeted it out about 5 minutes, 6 minutes after we got on. So it's out to, I don't know if we'll have more than 3 viewers, but at least my few
3 people.
Yeah, few thousand followers on Twitter will see some awareness of it. But yeah, we just, I know that this was a bit of a beta for us and the first kickoff of this type of activity, but in the future, we'll definitely just have to coordinate a little bit more to make sure we get this link shared, and yeah, just invite a few other people that have a little bit larger reach than ourselves to start sharing the good word and the benefits and the value of what's happening.
That'd be fantastic, brother. Thank you so much for being on. And then
so next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
So Jon has an extra hour.
Yeah, I hustled home from yoga. But yeah, I mean, that's still pretty early on your end. If you would like to join us again,
yeah, absolutely.
The agenda. Yeah, I mean, we can. The plan was to potentially do a clean energy for event run through cause.
Yeah, clean energy for a cause event. It's like what we would like to educate people about, and just what we'll be doing with these organizations that we give the money to. When they invite their supporters to hop on a Zoom and learn. Holly's been working so hard on it. Holly's a good friend of Jon's. That's how we met Jon, for people listening. And she's a part of the Ovanova team. And she's been working really hard on it. And we have it very simple. And we've sort of narrowed it down to 3 things that we feel people care the most about right now that they don't really understand very much, but think are kind of cool. Smart homes. Like, there's just so much neat stuff you can do with your home. Like when you talk to people like about their clothes never getting sour in a washer again because their machine sends them a message on their app. How's that work? I don't even know. Jon talked about it. I don't have one of these washing machines. Jon told me about
going right now, and it'll text me when it's done, so that way I can. It'll remind you, so you don't leave it in there overnight. It's very cool. You know.
Yeah, like I've done that a lot of times. I've wasted a lot of energy having to redo. Like I had to watch it 3 or 4 more times to get the mildew out after 2 days, so that's why I'm still single. But the smart washer went out. That's actually one of the smallest reasons why I'm still single on that list. But like there's things like having your air conditioner just keep your house hot all day, because who cares, and you're gone, but it knows when you're going to come home because it's tracked to your GPS and it kicks it on just in time to get it right where you want it. That's a huge energy savings. That's smart thermostats. Like there's so much stuff people just don't know about. Smart homes. And part of a smart home is we're positing as mining, like being able to actually take part in forming an alternative financial decentralized system and helping people figure out how to do that intelligently, even if to them it just means getting paid to make their heat, right? Like everybody has different reasons to do it. We want to help people understand that. The second thing is electric vehicles, which are really just giant batteries on wheels. Once we figure out the bidirectional inverter chargers and how to get all that juice out when we need it. And it's going to be a real fun thing. But electric vehicles are here. You hear about it every day. Companies going to all electric by 2030. That's not that long from now.
Right.
Like, it's here. And so helping people realize, oh, there's this rebate, there's this incentive. This is how much extra electricity you would need to make for yourself or produce. You can't make electricity. It's a fundamental force of nature, but produce this usable electricity for yourself. You need this many kilowatt hours per year. So you need this many solar panels if you drive this many miles. That would help people feel so much better even without the solar panels. So this means your bill is going to go up from your utility company by $20 a month. Your bill from your gas station is going to go down by 80. Another reason to go electric. And then the third thing is you got to power all these things. So why not use the sun to do it? And solar is just such a no-brainer that, it does require a lot of education, but we're just going to invite people to continue the education process if they'd like to know about it. So that's our Clean Energy for a Cause event in a nutshell. Thanks for showing up. You just raised $25 for something you care about. If you want to continue exploring for your home, we'll give another 25. Thank you for being a part of this, whatever this crazy thing is that we're doing together, working with people you trust.
We've never done one of those. We've done hundreds of Ovanova solar exploration experiences and supported communities by having a very similar format, except for it was all about solar. And so we figured it was boring, it's like a grid connected, not grid, it's more technical and nerdy, is totally,
we liked it.
But, people are like, yeah, of course I want a smart home. Of course I'd like to drive an EV. And of course it makes sense not to rent my electricity, and of course I want to get another $25 donated to my kids' cheerleading team by getting a free custom solar design over Zoom with nobody coming to my house. So we're just constantly iterating to find a way to live in a world that makes sense. And I guess that sense of urgency is just a little bit more about the recognition that for most people, even close family members and friends, people just seem to be too busy to listen.
I read today that people spend 9 minutes a year thinking about their electricity bill. They spend more time figuring out if they want to actually skip the ad on a YouTube channel a year.
Right. It is awesome to have somebody come to an event and be woken up to the power of the sun. And the next day when they wake up and have to go to work in the morning, a lot of times that's just forgotten because of the turmoil, just the typical life that at least Americans live. And we have currently focused our energy and solar adoption and supporting communities in the continental United States, because typically if something happens here, it happens everywhere else too,
Great.
It'd be nice even if the currency crashes when China becomes 2 to 3 times size our global economy, that at least we'll be able to keep the lights on. If we have enough crypto miners, we'll still have a currency we could trade, so let's just go ahead and use these fiat dollars to do something useful with them while they exist. So
yeah, when you need a fire in the fireplace for a little bit ambiance, and 10 years from now you can take your paper fiat that's done you nothing but depreciate and you're sitting on $1 million for each Bitcoin, you can stay warm you can use it as lighter fluid.
That'll be the day. That'll be awesome. Thanks for coming on, John. It's always fun. I wasn't sure you were gonna join us. I just imagine you're just like a very, very busy man. So I'm glad you made it.
Yeah, you guys are very special to me. So I appreciate the invite, and will happily contribute when and how I can. I learn always. It's my enjoyment with these events too, is just more for educational purposes too.
We could just have a section each week where it's like, hey John, what'd you learn this week? And you can be as nerdy as you want to, and it's just like, this is what John learned. So feel free to come back next week and tell us what you learned.
Will do. Yeah, I'll bring some humor. It won't be Senator Warren and Elon Musk because that's this week, but we'll definitely find some interesting Twitter topics for next week. So absolutely, I look forward to it.
Thanks for being on.
Okay, thank you guys. Have a great night.
You too.